The mysteries of the Great Pyramid of Egypt are unveiled. About 4,600 years ago, a miracle of the world was built in Egypt. The one which continues to astonish people over the centuries, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the biggest Egyptian pyramid and the tomb of 4th dynasty pharaoh Khufu. It was built in the early 26th century BC during a period of around 27 years. The pyramid is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the only one to remain largely intact. As part of the Giza Pyramid complex, it borders present-day Giza in Greater Cairo, Egypt. It is at the most northern end of the line of the 3 pyramids of Giza. With a height of 147 meters or 481 feet, this remained the tallest man-made structure in the world for more than 4,000 years. The Great Pyramid was built by quarrying an estimated 2.3 million large blocks weighing 6 million tons in total. The majority of stones are not uniform in size or shape and are only roughly dressed. The question that left people stunned was how it was built. Back then, people didn't have any cranes, bulldozers, or modern technology. They didn't even have wheels. Even so, they built a monument that still stands. Can you imagine a structure standing for over 4,600 years through the hot summers, storms, torrential rains, and weathering? There's no other surviving construction as old and as vast as this. How is this made possible? Let's understand the mystery of the pyramids. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, is one of the first major authors to mention the pyramid. In the second book of his work The Histories, he discusses the history of Egypt and the Great Pyramid. This report was created more than 2,000 years after the structure was built. Herodotus writes that the Great Pyramid was built by Khufu, Hellenized as Cheops, who, he erroneously relays, ruled after the Ramesside period, the 19th dynasty and the 20th dynasty. Khufu was a tyrannical king, Herodotus claims, which may explain the Greeks' view that such buildings can only come about through cruel exploitation of the people. Herodotus further states that gangs of 100,000 laborers worked on the building in 3-month shifts, taking 20 years to build. The Great Pyramid has been determined to be about 4,600 years old by 2 principal approaches: indirectly, through its attribution to Khufu and his chronological age, based on archaeological and textual evidence, and directly, via radiocarbon dating of organic material found in the pyramid and included in its mortar. The pyramid is located on the west bank of the River Nile, and if you see photos or videos of it, you'll see that it isn't the only pyramid. You'd see 2 other pyramids built on the same site. Of the 3, the tallest is the Pyramid of Giza, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu. Smaller than it is the Pyramid of Khafra, the second largest pyramid in Egypt. It is said to have been built by Khufu's son Khafra. The third and smallest is the Pyramid of Menkaure, said to have been built by Khafra's son. In addition are the Great Sphinx, several burial tombs, and smaller pyramids. There are a total of 118 pyramids of varying shapes and sizes. Many of them have been eroded by the weathering, and very few are in good condition. The most well-preserved are these 3 pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza. What was the reason for building the Great Pyramid of Giza? The same reason why several ancient monuments were built. They were built as a tomb. The pharaohs are buried inside the pyramids. Ancient Egyptians believed in the afterlife. They believed that life doesn't end at death. After death, the soul of the person travels to the underworld, where the god then judge it. Those who lived a life of goodness remain immortal in the afterlife. So to prepare for the afterlife, the pharaohs would commission tombs for themselves while they reigned. A large amount of food, treasures, jewelry, furniture, and clothes were to be buried with the pharaoh in the pyramid so that they would be used in the afterlife. After they died, their bodies were mummified and then sealed in a wooden or stone sarcophagus. You might wonder how we are certain that this is why the pyramids were built. There are 2 main reasons. First, we have discovered scripts written on several other pyramids. Texts on such sarcophaguses and pyramids tell us about their customs. Second, most of the historical pyramids in Egypt and Sudan have been used as tombs. But specifically speaking, in the Great Pyramid of Giza, no substantial evidence was found, so people came up with alternative theories. When the archaeologists entered the Great Pyramid, they found 3 relics and an empty sarcophagus. The sarcophagus is believed to be of Khufu, and the treasures that must have surrounded it is believed to have been looted before the archaeologists got to it. Those who disagree with this have come up with bizarre alternative theories. One popular theory is that the Great Pyramid was a power plant that could generate electricity. People who believe this claim that the ancient Egyptians were technologically advanced and had already learned how to harness electricity. As evidence for this theory, some of the ancient artworks seen on the walls of some ancient Egyptian temples showed that they were building a light bulb. They say that the Egyptians had invented it, but the technology was somehow lost later. But if light bulbs did exist in ancient Egypt, why have we not found any evidence proving it? Today, with most of the historians in agreement, it is clear that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built as a tomb. Back then, people believed that the bigger a tomb and the more treasures in it, the better the afterlife of the pharaoh would be. Now, we get to the biggest question. How were these pyramids built? Actually, this is the most mysterious part of the pyramids. How did the people build a 147-meter height structure, using these enormous rock blocks, which weigh between 2.5 to 80 tons? How was each stone carved precisely and evenly when there were no standard tools for carving? How were the stones stacked on top of each other? There are several theories regarding this. Firstly, let's look at the misconception that people have learned about pyramids. Films show slave labors have been used to build the pyramids. Poor enslaved people were forced to work here all day and brutally abused and whipped by the supervisors. For a long time, people believed that enslaved people built the pyramids. Herodotus, a Greek historian from the 5th century BC, was the first to suggest that enslaved people built the pyramids. But today, we know this to be false. People who built these pyramids were highly skilled laborers. They weren't starved and abused, rather, they were given abundant food. They were fed so well that they were stronger and more well-fed than the average Egyptian citizen back then. They lived in cities near the construction site. Regarding the construction material, about 5.5 million tons of limestone, 8,000 tons of granite, and 500,000 tons of mortar were used. Most of these materials were sourced from nearby areas. At most, they were brought in from the region of southern Egypt, which was around 800 kilometers from the site. Now, a major question is how these huge stones were moved. Back then, wheels have not been invented yet. There was a real need to have vehicles with wheels that they could load up with the stones and easily push to the site. A reasonable theory is that they built rafts that floated on the river to move the stones from the quarries. And once the stones were at the pyramids, they were stacked on top of each other using sleighs over wet ground. This is an interesting theory discovered recently in a study in 2014. The basis of this theory is this painting, found at the tomb of Jehudihotep. This is a later tomb built around 1900 BC. In this painting, you can see 170 people pulling this statue on a sledge. Ropes were used to pull this heavy statue. If you look closely at the painting, you will see that a man is pouring water on the sand in front of the statue. At first, archaeologists believed this was a part of the ritual. A tradition, perhaps, of pouring water before the sledge. When physicist Daniel Bohn and his team tested this out, they found that having a certain amount of water in the sand reduces the friction between the ground and the thing being pulled. Using a specific ratio of about 2 to 5% water into the sand, it makes it easier to pull heavy things on the wet sand. Once we understood this, the next question would be, how were these heavy stones lifted without any machinery? Normally, a system of winches should be used to lift them, but as we knew, even wheels didn't exist in Egypt during the 4th dynasty. It existed for pottery only. Instead, it is believed that they had built an efficient system of ramps. In 2015, a team of English and French archaeologists uncovered a 4,600-year-old wooden ramp in a quarry. To move the stones up the slope, they installed a system of wooden pillars on the sides of the slopes, and then they used ropes around the pillars to pull up the stones. According to this theory, after completing a level of the pyramid, they would have created a new slope, and to ensure that the angle of the slope wasn't steep, they would have built a long slope, which could reduce the angle of the slope. In another theory, it was suggested that they might have used levers to stack the stones on each other. Researchers believe that a similar system, known as shaduf, existed in Egypt for millenniums. They used the same mechanism to draw water from the river Nile, to irrigate their fields. These theories sound fascinating, but the inconsistency arises in the form of construction time. We know that the pyramid was completed within 20 years. If 20,000 people transported each stone like this, a stone must be placed every 3 minutes, each day throughout the year. It seems unlikely that they would have worked so rapidly. This is why it is still a mystery until now. We do know that the layers at the bottom were placed without cement. And then, a cement was added to the layers on top, which increased the stability of the structure. This is why, throughout thousands of years, the Pyramid of Giza still stands, despite several earthquakes. There's also a mystery regarding the cement. Though scientists know the chemistry of the cement used, they have yet to be able to recreate it. And finally, the last step of the construction was the outermost layer of the pyramid. It was made of fine, whitish limestone. It meant that these pyramids would shine white brilliantly when sunlight fell on them. This was lost over thousands of years. The outermost layers have worn off from the pyramids of Khufu and Menkaure, but in the pyramid of Khafra, you can see a part of the layer at the top. Moving on from the construction to the pyramid's design is extremely fascinating. Did you know that the pyramids are designed so that the directions point exactly towards north, east, south, and west? The error here is minute, merely 1/15 of a degree. These are believed to point accurately towards the 4 directions. How could that be? There was no compass back then, no modern technology such as GPS. Once again, researchers tried to explain theoretically how the ancient Egyptians could achieve such a high level of precision. A popular theory is said to be by following the autumn equinox when the Earth's tilt allows the day and night to be equal. The shadow on the ground is straight towards east and west. Using this method, the degree of error in the calculations of the pyramid would be the same degree of error in the shadows during the autumn equinox. The second theory is that the ancient Egyptians used the stars in the sky to align their design. In 1989, Robert Bauval came up with the Orion correlation theory. He claimed that the 3 pyramids in Giza were aligned similarly to the 3 stars of the Orion's belt. He believed that the alignment was intentional. And that the ancient Egyptians knew astronomy. That they would track the stars at night and study them. And accordingly, they harvested various crops at certain times. However, there are some points that are used against this theory, or that the 3 pyramids weren't planned at the same time, and neither were they built at the same time. And when this theory was tested by astronomers in 1999, studying the pyramids in the context of the stars in the Orion's belt, it was found that the pyramids do not align exactly with it. The thing is that the constellation has moved a bit over the course of thousands of years. Back then, the stars weren't aligned in the same place as we see them now. It was important to discuss this theory as it's a classic case where humans try to find patterns even in things that have none. If you take the same thing to the next level, exaggerate it a bit, and you'll have bizarre theories. Some people claim that aliens built the pyramids because they believe humans couldn't create this. In my opinion, such theories go against the principle of scientific thinking. This is the shortcut method of finding an answer when we cannot find any. It is better to acknowledge the facts and then clearly lay out what we do not know so that the next generation of archaeologists and historians can research them and discover the complete solution or explanation for the mysteries. And you? What do you think about that? Thank you very much for watching the video.